Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and Mitzvah Hashem today we will be learning. Well, we're going to complete Daf Samach Daled Amud Aleph, and then hopefully complete Daf Samach Daled Amud Beis as well. I know I tend to be a little bit overly optimistic sometimes with how much I think we're going to cover, but I think that given the topic, I think that this is a realistic outlook on today's share. So without further ado, let's go. We are continuing to learn Hilchos B'tzias Hapas. We pick up today on Daf Samach Daled Amud Aleph, 3 lines off the bottom near the end of the line in the Shulchan Aruch with Siman Kuf Samach Zayin Sif Tes. Now, just a brief recap of Sif Ches, because Sif Tes really continues on the topic of Sif Ches. In Sif Ches, the Mechaber spoke about somebody who began to eat and he forgot to make the hamotzi. So he washed, he sat down to his suda, he picked up his bread, he forgot to make a hamotzi, and now he's eating the suda without making a hamotzi. Now, of course, we know how terrible it is to eat without a bracha. Famous Gemara in Brachas that says, Kala oichel b'li bracha, anybody who eats without a bracha, it's ki'ilu gazal me'akadosh baruch hu miYisrael. It's like he's stealing, so to speak, from Borei Olam. So certainly we don't want to find ourselves eating without a bracha rishona. But what happened over here was inadvertent. Like the Mechaber said in the beginning of Sif Ches, the very first word was shakach. Somehow he forgot. He got distracted and he neglected to make a bracha of hamotzi. Now he's eating without a hamotzi. What should he do? So the Mechaber told us it depends. If he realizes in middle of the Suda, so like I said yesterday, he's eating a tuna fish sandwich. He ate half of his sandwich. Now he realizes he forgot to make a hamotzi. Well, he still has another half a sandwich to eat. So make a hamotzi now and continue eating, eat the rest of the sandwich. Let's say he doesn't realize until he finished eating. He finished eating, and now suddenly he realizes, oy vey, I ate a whole Suda, and I neglected to make a hamotzi. Well, in that case, the Mechaber says, if you finished eating, you can't make a bracha anymore. The reason you can't make a bracha anymore is because we always make a bracha over lasi yasan. The classic example I always use is by berachah ha-mitzvahs. When somebody goes to take a lulav and an esrig, he makes the bracha of Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvahs of Tzivanu al netilas lulav before he's yotze the mitzvah. He's holding the lulav, the hadassim, the aravas, but he has the esrig upside down. So he makes the bracha first, then he flips over the esrig, and now he's yotze the mitzvah. But you always make the bracha before you're yotze the mitzvah. So too by berachas hanenin. You make the bracha before you're neneh from the food. You don't make the bracha l'shavar. You don't make the bracha after you already were neneh from the food and now make a bracha. So if you sat down to a suda, you already ate your whole tuna fish sandwich, you're not eating anymore, you're not going to be able to make a hamotzi. That's what the Mechaber says. Now, the Mishnah Berurah points out at the end of the Siman, at the end of the Sif, at the end of Ois Kat Mem Ches, the Mishnah Berurah says, Umihu, however, im efshar lo lechol oid ma'at, if you still have some bread and you're able to eat a little bit more, what does that mean that you're able to eat a little bit more? Well, we saw yesterday in the Shar Hatzion, Ois Kat Mem Zayin, if it's going to be mamash achila gasa, if you're cuts b'mezaynai, you're like, I can't eat another morsel. If I need another morsel, it's mamish, it's going to be achila gasa, well, then you can't eat anymore. But if it's not mamish going to be achila gasa, if you have some bread left and you have a little room left and you could eat a little bit more, then the Mishnah Berurah said it would be better that you should make a hamotzi and you should eat a little bit more. And again, we saw in the Shar Hatzion that the Chavetz Chaim said one of the reasons for this is to be Mekayim the Shitas HaRavid. The Ravid holds that in such a case, you actually would make a bracha l'sha'avar. If you ate your whole Suda and you're finished and you realized you didn't make a hamotzi, the Ravid actually holds that you would make a bracha now without eating anything more. Now, we don't pascha like the Ravid, but certainly if you have some bread left and you have a little room left in you, so make a hamotzi and then eat a little bit more. That's what we saw in Sif Ches. Now let's go along to Sif Tes, third line up from the bottom near the end of the line. Says the Mechaber, Imhu misupak in berachah hamotzie lav. Oh, it's a new case. Let's say you're eating a Suda, and somehow in middle of the Suda, you suddenly wake up and, I'm not sure if I made a hamotzie or not. So now you're misupik. Says the Mechaber, Imhu misupik in berachah hamotzie lav. If you have a suffix, einoi chayzer umavarech, you do not make a new bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah cut mem tes einoi chayzer umavarech kishayochal oid. If you're continuing to eat, you do not make a new bracha. The berachas hamotzie einoi elam d'Rabbanan, because this is a suffix bracha, and the whole bracha Rishona is a din d'Rabbanan we paskin. So berachas hamotzie einoi elam d'Rabbanan was sveika l'kula, suffix brachas lahakal. Suffix brachas lahakal means when we have a suffix, we do not make a bracha. So over here you have a suffix, whether you made hamotzie or not, you don't make a new bracha. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, mitamzeh, and for this reason, afilu im yirtze lahachmir, even if you're like, kala eichel beli bracha ki l'gazal me'akadosh baruch hu miYisrael, I certainly don't want to be doing that, so I want to be machmir and I want to make a new bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, afilu im yirtze lahachmir levarich gam kein eina rashoi. You're not allowed to be machmir and decide that you want to make a new bracha. Misham bracha she'eina tzricha. Because if you're going to go make a bracha now, that's what we call a bracha she'eina tzricha. And a bracha she'eina tzricha is to be motzii shem shamayim levatala. You can't do that. Miyu, however, says the Mishnah Berurah, im nizdamin lefanav b'misibasai echad sheroitz alechel pas. Let's say now somebody comes down and sits down next to you, and now he's about to eat his tuna fish sandwich, and he didn't make a hamotzie yet. Oh, nachayin sheyotziyena beberachas hamotzie. So ask him to be motzii you with his hamotzie, and now you'll be okay. And on the tzad that you didn't make a bracha, you'll be yotzei with this fellow's bracha, and now you're covered. Okay, Sif Yud. 2 lines to the bottom, middle of the line. Here on Samach Daled Amud Aleph says the Mechaber. Interesting case. Im bimkoim berachas hamotzie berachah שהכל niyeh b'dvarei. Somebody picked up his tuna fish sandwich, and he held the bread with 10 fingers the way he's supposed to be, and he said, Baruch atah Hashem, and by Hashem, he picked up the bread like he's supposed to, but then instead of saying, hamotzie lechem in haaretz, he said, שהכל niyeh b'dvarei. By the way, I can't resist. What a beautiful bracha שהכל niyeh b'dvarei is. Baruch atah Hashem, gebenched is the Rabbeinu Shalom, Elokeinu, our God, Melech ha'olam, the King of the world, שהכל, that everything, nihiyeh b'dvarei, happens through His word. What a gewaltige bracha that is. You listen to the news and you get upset with what this government said, and what that government said, and what this talking head said, and what that talking head said, and what happened over here, what happened over there. שהכל nihiyeh b'dvarei. The Rabbeinu Shalom, he's got the strings. Okay, so now, this person made a shahakal instead of a hamotzie. So what does he do? Says the Mechaber, Im bimkoim berachas hamotzie berach שהכל nihiyeh b'dvarei, or she'amar, he said a bracha in Aramaic. He made something similar to a hamotzie, but he did not say it in Lashon HaKodesh. He said it in Aramaic. Oisha Amar, Brich Rachmana, Brich is Baruch, gebenched, blessed. Brich Rachmana. Rachmana means the merciful one. Rachmana is another word that we use for the Rabbeinu Shalom. So, Brich Rachmana, Malka, the king, Mare the high pita, the master of this bread. What does it mean that the Rebbeinu Shalom is the master of the bread? Well, the Rebbeinu Shalom created the bread, and the Rebbeinu Shalom gave me the bread. So the Rebbeinu Shalom is sort of the master of the bread, says the Mechaber, Yotza. In both of these cases, you're Yotza. So 2 halachas that we have over here. The first case was somebody made a shahakal instead of a hamotzie. So you made a shahakal instead of a hamotzie. You could be Yotza with the shahakal. The second halacha was a person did not make a bracha b'lashon HaKodesh at all. He made a bracha in Aramaic. Berich Rachmana Malka Mare Dahai Pita Yotza. In both of these cases, the Mechaber says, you're yoitza b'di'evet. Now, something that's very interesting, just I should point it out to you, in the Aramaic Lashon we have over here, what are the essential parts of a bracha? The essential parts of a bracha are Shem, the name of the Rebbeinu Shalom, Malchus, the idea that the Rebbeinu Shalom is the Melech, and the Inyan HaBracha, the topic that we're making a bracha on. Well, in Brich Rachmana Malka Mari Dahaipita, you have all of those variables. Brich Rachmana, Rachmana, the merciful one, that is in the place of the Shem. That's in place of Hashem. So that's the Shem. Malka, king, that's Malchus. Mare Dahaipita is the Inyan of the bracha. We're making a bracha on the bread. And that's why b'di'evet Brich Rachmana Malka Mari Dahaipita yotza. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah here. It says the Mishnah Berurah is Katanun. B'mkain berachas hamotzie. Hainu. After pasta. The truth is, before I read the Mishnah Berurah inside, many of you might be wondering, well, this Mechaber doesn't seem to be such a huge chiddush. We know that שהכל is kind of a generic bracha that could pater anything. So, okay, it could pater anything. It could pater pas also. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, there's an additional chiddush over here. Says the Mishnah Berurah is Katanun. Hainu. After pasu davar choshuv, even though pas has an extra chashivus, and it gets its own special bracha of hamotzie lechem in haaretz, afilu hachi mahani b'di'evet berachah, still in all, b'di'evet שהכל will cover even pas. V'cholshken al kol davar, certainly שהכל b'di'evet covers anything else. K'di'isa l'kamon b'simin reish vav sif aleph. Ois katan aleph. Bira שהכל nir b'dvaroi. He made the bracha of שהכל. Says to the Chavetz Chaim, what does this mean? That b'di'evet he made a שהכל. Hainu she'amar baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam שהכל nir b'dvaroi. He made the full שהכל with its proper nusach. Or af even shelo yizker tchila klal. Maybe he didn't say baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Af shelo yizker tchila klal rak amar brich rachmana. Oh, no, I'm reading this wrong. Wow, I learned this Mishnah Berurah wrong when I prepared share, and I just caught my mistake. So let me read it again. This Rabbi Isai is the siyata d'shmaya of saying a shir. I learned this Mishnah Berurah wrong when I prepared share. I learned it wrong again when right before share I did a quick review, and I just realized now when I'm saying the shir the mistake that I made. So says the Mishnah Berurah like this. Let's go back to the beginning of Ois Katan Nun Aleph. The Mechaber gave us over here in Sif Yud 2 different cases. One case that he gave us was somebody said instead of the hamotzie, he made a שהכל nir b'dvaroi. Or Oy she'amar, or said the Mechaber, he said brich rachmana malka mare dahaipita. The Mishnah Berurah is stressing to us over here in Ois Katan Nun Aleph that these are 2 separate cases. Berach שהכל nir b'dvaroi. Hainu, that first case is she'amar baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam שהכל nir b'dvaroi. He made a perfect normal שהכל. In that case, says the Mechaber b'di'evet, you're covered, and you're yoitza, and you can eat the pas. Or a second case, av shelo yizker tchila klal. He didn't start off saying any normal nusach habracha. He didn't say anything Meloshen HaKodesh. Rak Amar Brich Rachmana, he only said Brich Rachmana Malka Mari Dahaipita L'chud. That's all he said. Don't think that the second case is that he said שהכל nir b'dvaroi Brich Rachmana Malka Mari Dahaipita. No. In the second case, all he said was Brich Rachmana Malka Mari Dahaipita. Still in all, you're yoitza. Says the Mishnah Berurah, why? Yotza, kevin sheyesh shem, you have Rachmana, which is the shem. Malchus, you have Malka, which is Malchus. The milas Rachmana koyma makam Hashem. The word Rachmana stands in place of Hashem's name. Shekein hayu karin oisai beBavel, because in Bavel they would commonly refer to the Rebbeinu Shalom as Rachmana. Or milas Malka, who Malchus? Malka is Malchus. Ois Katan Beis Dahaipita, that gives you Inyan HaBracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'im Amar Malka Mare Dahai. Let's say, instead of saying Brich Rachmana malka more dahai pita. Pita is bread, pita. Now, let's say he didn't say the word pita. All he said was, brich rachmana malka more dahai, the master of this. But he didn't say bread. Are you yoitza then? Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'yam abar malka more dahai, v'lang hiske shem pas klal, and he doesn't mention pita, he doesn't say anything about pas, efshir the yotza, it could be his yoitza anyway, kevet cha pas munachas lefanov, because the pas is in front of him. And he said malka dahai, he said more dahai, the master of this, and it's in front of him. V'ayin bir halacha, he says, take a look in the bir halacha. In the bir halacha, it's bir halacha, dibra maskal dahai pita. He says that the Haggas Ashri says it could be that you're yoitza. He says that the Beis Yosef says again, this is a sveika d'Rabbanan. We're talking about a suffix and a bracha rishona. This is a sveika d'Rabbanan. So the Beis Yosef says maybe you're yoitza b'diavad because it's a suffix. But says the Beis Yosef, according to the Rambam says straight out that you always must mention the Inyan habracha. And over here, you didn't mention the Inyan habracha. You said Mari Dahai, but you didn't say Pita. So, and the Rambam, you don't find such a bracha. You don't find a bracha that doesn't mention a word about the main topic of the bracha at all. And therefore, the Bir Halacha ends up over here. The Chavetz Chaim says, "V'alkein loy ha'etakti kiim l'shoyna rishayna be'inyan zeh." The Chavetz Chaim says that's why in the Mishnah Berurah I didn't want to say that the Beis Yosef says that you're yoitza. I just brought down the Rishonim that say that there's a suffix. Efshir the yotza kevin chapas menachas lefanov. Okay, Ois Katan Nun Gimel on the bottom line of the Mishnah Berurah here, yotza. The bottom line is the Mechaber said that b'diavad you're yoitza either with the shahakol or the second case with brich rachmana malka mori dahai pita. Yotza you're yoitza. Now yotza means you're yoitza b'diavad. L'chatchila you can't do this. Says the Mishnah Berurah clearly, yotza b'diavad. Ava l'chatchila aser b'shtein. But to do this l'chatchila is aser either one. It's aser l'chatchila to make a shahakol on bread. It's also to say brich rachmana malka damari dahai pita on bread. That's also l'chatchila. B'diavad, you could be yoitza. Says the Mishnah Berurah, da'af, turning to Samach Daled and Beis, da'af the brachas de'emarin b'chaloshin, because even though the truth is, a bracha could be recited in any language, hainu heicha deloishina klal minusach habracha. That's where you did not change the nusach of the bracha. So, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. If you would say, blessed is Hashem, our God, King of the world, who brings forth the bread from the earth. In that case, you made a hamotzi in English, but you did not change the nusach habracha. Baruch, blessed, atah Hashem, are you Hashem, Elokeinu, our God, melech ha'olam, the King of the world, hamotzi lechem, who brings forth bread, min haaretz, from the earth. So, okay, you said it in English, but you didn't change the nusach habracha. That's when we say that you can make a bracha b'chaloshin. Aval hacha, but in this case, brich rachmana malka more dahai pita shina minusach shekav chazal b'loshen hakodesh. This is a different lashon. We don't say hamotzi lechem. We don't say master of this bread. We say who brought forth the bread from the earth. So you're changing the nusach. But you still are yoitza b'diavad. Kevin shall call upon him his kishem malchus in bracha. Why are you yoitza b'diavad? Again, because you have rachmana, which is the shem, you have malka, which is malchus, and you have morei dahai pita, which is the inyan habracha. According to the psak of the Mechaber, that Mirtz Hashem, Bez Hashem Yisbarach, we'll see later in Siman, Reish Yud Daled Sif Aleph, Mayri Kan, we have to say that we're talking about over here, where you added another word. The Amar Malka da Olma Morei Dahai Pita. Over here the Mechaber says, Brich Rachmana Malka, king, Morei Dahai Pita. the master of this bread. But there's a word missing, and that is ol da'olma. We say melech, king, ha'olam, of the world. In this Aramaic nusach that the Mechaber gives us over here, it's brich rachmana malka, king. Doesn't say anything about the whole world. The Mechaber later on in Reish Yud Daled says that if you make a bracha in Lashon HaKodesh and you skip the word ha'olam, so you say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaMotzi Lechem and Aretz, but you don't say ha'olam, the Mechaber says you're not Yotze. I'll read to you the Lashon of the Mechaber. The Lashon of the Mechaber is Va'afilu lo dileg elotevas ha'olam levad. Even if you only skip the word ha'olam, tzarich lachzor v'levarech, you have to make a new bracha. Why? I'll tell you why. Because a king without subjects is not a king. The melech levad ain't a malchus. Somebody will get up and declare himself king, but he'll go on a desert island and get up and say, I am the king. He'll put on purple robes and he'll get himself a scepter and a crown. He's not a king. You know why he's not a king? Because he has no subjects. So you need ha'olam, melech, the king, ha'olam of the world. So according to that psak of the Mechaber in Reish Yud Daled, over here in Aramaic, you would have to say, Brich Rachmana Malka Da'olma, king of the world, Marei D'Haipita. Continues the Mishnah Berurah here. V'ayin b'mashenichtav sham b'bir halacha. He says you can take a look over there. It's Hashem. We'll see it when we get to Reish Yud Daled. The words of the bir halacha over there. Umashma b'shas, and the implication in the Gemara in Brachas Mem Amud Beis is Dehu adin amar baruch hamokoim melech ha'olam shebara pas zeh. If you use the word hamokoim for the Rebbeinu Shalom, for the shame, hamokoim literally means the place. How's that a reference to the Rebbeinu Shalom? Because the Rebbeinu Shalom is the makom of the world. It's not that the Rebbeinu Shalom is in the universe. So to speak, the universe is in the Rebbeinu Shalom. What does that mean? It's not that there's a universe that's bigger than the Rebbeinu Shalom and the universe contains the Rebbeinu Shalom. There's nothing, so to speak, bigger. The Rebbeinu Shalom is l'mayla min hazman, is l'mayla min hamakom, ein loy guf. So it's not that there's something external to the Rebbeinu Shalom that encompasses or contains the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom, so to speak, encompasses and contains all. That's why we use the word hamokaim for the Rebbeinu Shalom. Probably the most famous place that everybody knows is by the Seder night. Baruch hamokaim baruch hu, keneged al badim dibra Torah. So it's the word mokaim is another way that we refer to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and therefore if you would say Baruch HaMokaim, that would be the shame. Melech HaOlam is Malkus, Shabara Paseh, who created this bread, that's in Yonah the Bracha, the Yotza, you would be Yotza. Okay, let's move along to Sif Yod Aleph. I want to try to hold true to finishing Samach Daled Amud Beis. So let's go turn back to Samach Daled Amud Aleph. Last two words on the daf in the Mechaber, Sif Yud Aleph. Says the Mechaber, Im hayu shnayim oy rabim. If two people or more, two people or a rabbim, were sitting together by a Suda, and they're all going to be eating pas, so they all have to make a hamotzi now. Says the Mechaber, Echad mivarech lekulam. One person should make the bracha, and he should be mitzi everybody else. Instead of everybody making their own brachas, one person should be mitzi everybody else. Now, before we go weiter, let's just jump quickly into the bir halacha dibra maschel echad mevarech lekulam. Why is this? Why should one person bedafka be mitzi everybody else? In a way, you would think that it's more chashuv if each person makes his own bracha. Each person makes a bracha, mamish kaval kazach, right? No, the Chaim is telling us no. You have a rabbim, it's better that one person should be mitzi everybody. Says the Chavetz Chaim here in the bir halacha. This is true. Afilu im hamesubid yoidin basman levarich. This is true even if each individual is perfectly capable of making his own bracha. Still, one person should make the bracha and he should be mitzi everybody else. Mikol makayim hider mitzvahu she'echad yavarech. It is a hider mitzvah that one person should make the bracha v'yoytzi kulam and be mitzi everybody else. Why? De beroiv am hadras melech. We have a rule Beroiv am, with a greater multitude, hadras melech, that is the glory of the king. How is this beroiv am hadras melech? Because if one person makes the bracha and he's moitzi everybody else, what happens? One person makes the bracha out loud to a whole group of people. Everybody listens. Everybody has in mind to be yotze, and they all say amen. They're all ma'ames the bracha. They all declare the truth of the bracha. So we're all doing this together. That's as opposed to each person. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech hametz lechem and haaretz. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech hametz lechem and haaretz. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech hametz lechem and haaretz. This is, we're all doing it together. That's beroiv am hadras melech. Now, if you take a look in the Dirshu footnote number 47, he brings down like this. We don't find, other than, let's say, the Shabbos Seudos, we don't find that this is the minig. You have 10 people, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people sitting together during their lunch break at work, eating their sandwiches. The minig is not that one person is moitzi everybody else. So it says here in the footnote, the Mishnah Berurah the Mishnah Berurah is going to write in the next Siman, in Siman Kuf Samach Chesef Kol Chaf Aleph, Ube Biur Halacha Le'el, and in the Biur Halacha, he says earlier in Kuf Samach Hey, She'ein Adam Moitzi Es Chaveroi Beberachas HaMotzii, that we're not noyeg that one person should be moitzi somebody else in a HaMotzii. V'chein Kasav b'Mishnah Berurah Lekaman in Reish Yud Gimel, She'ein Adam Moitzi Es Chaveroi Kimat B'Shum Davar Meichel. We're not in the habit that one person should be moitzi somebody else in a bracha rishona on food. Ubetama davar, and for the reason for this, Kasav Sham, the Chavetz Chaim writes over there, she'efshir shu misham she'ena kol b'kiyim lehiskavin lotzei saloitzi. And unfortunately, I see this a lot, Rabbi Isai, by Shabbos Sudas. People are not bucky, and they don't pay enough attention to the need that the Mavarech has to have kavanah to be moitzi the shoymim, and the shoymim have to listen to the bracha and have kavanah to be yotze. Instead, what happens is you have people goofing around the table. The Mavarech goes, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech hametz lechem and haaretz, amen. But they don't have kavanah. Even by Kiddush, I see a lot of times that people are not listening with kavanah to be yotze Kiddush. So says the Chavetz Chaim, it could be that's why we're not so in the minig nowadays of one person being moitzi others, even though the Mechaber says that's what you should do, and in the Biur Halacha we see it's because of beroiv am hadras melech. Now let's jump right back in here. So the Mechaber said if you have shnayim or rabim, top line, samach daled and beis, if you have 2 people or a rabim, echad mevarech lekulam. One person should make the bracha out loud and be moitzi everybody else. However, says the Mechaber, there's a very strong caveat to this. Vedafka heisebu. In the Mechaber's world, we're going to see that nowadays it's not that way, but in the world of the Mechaber said, you need a certain level of kvius in order for this to work. In order for one person to be moitzi the other people, we need them to be seen as a group that's eating together. And that's why one is being moitzi the others. In order to have that level of kvius, says the Mechaber, that in his world, you need haseba. Now, we're all familiar with haseba for the Pesach Seder, leaning over on the left side. Well, that's the way they used to eat. They didn't eat in chairs upright by a table. They ate in haseba, on couches, on futons, with little tables next to them, or what have you. And that was the derech of kvius. When people got together to be kivei seuda together, they all ate ba'aseba. So therefore, says the Mechaber here, v'dafke sebu shederkva. This only works if they're eating ba'aseba, which is a kvius. Or the Ramah says, oy balabayis in b'nei beisoy. Or you have a balabayis, you have a head of the household that's eating together with his family, the heavy ke'asebu. That is also like everybody eating ba'aseba. Now, the reason for this is a drop murky. The Mishnah Berurah says that the reason is, and from what the Mishnah Berurah says, it sounds like What the Ramah means is when a family ate together, they did not all eat bahaseba, but the head of the household ate bahaseba. Since the head of the household was eating bahaseba, his haseba creates the kviyos for all of them. If it's a disparate group, if it's just 10 friends eating together, then the Mechaber said all 10 have to be eating bahaseba in order for there to be a kviyos. Says the Ramah, if it's a head of household with his family, then the haseba of the head of household creates the kviyos for everybody, even though the other people are not eating bahaseba. Okay, but what we see over here, both from the Mechaber and from the Ramah, is this requirement of kviyos. Continues the Mechaber on the second line down. Avalim hayu yoshvim b'loy haseba. But if they're eating together but without haseba, kevan she'eina nikboim yachad, since there's no kviyos, there's no permanence that brings them together and shows that they're sitting down as a group, then kol echad mevarach la'atzmai. Then they all make their own bracha. Let's pause over here for a second. Let's go into the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Nun Daled. The Chavetz Chaim is a little puzzled. Why does the Mechaber say, Im hayu shnayim oy rabim? If there were 2 people or a rabbim. Why doesn't the Mishnah Berurah just say, if there were a rabbim? Why does he say 2 people or a rabbim? Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Nun Daled, Nakat Loshen Zeh. The reason the Mechaber uses this language is mishum de beberkas hamazayin, by benching dinuhu dedafka b'shloisha mezamnin yachad. We know that by benching you need 3 for a mezumin. Not only do you need 3 for a mezumin, you need 3 umaytzi and kalechad es chaveroi. If you have 3, one person could bench and we might see the other 2. Ubishnayim, if you only have 2 people eating together, not only do they not make a mezumin, one person is not supposed to be moitzi the other one in berachas hamazon. Ubishnayim ein moitzi an echad es chaver lechatchila. Lechatchila, if you only have 2 people benching, one should not be moitzi the other. They both have to bench. So that's the halacha by benching. By benching, in order to have one be moitzi somebody else, you need a minimum of 3. Aval beberachas hamoitzi, but by the bracha of hamoitzi, the Mechaber is telling me, by the Hamotzi, even if you only have 2 people, it's even lechatchila that one could be moitzi the other. Fatam, and the reason for this distinction, Mavula Kaman Reish Siman Kuf Tzad Gimel Mishnah Berurah, is spelled out in Siman Kuf Tzad Gimel in the Mishnah Berurah. Now again, I'll tell you what that reason is, but before I do, again, what the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here is, why did the Mechaber tell me if you have 2 or a rabbim? Because he wanted to emphasize that even when you have only 2 people making a moitzi together, it is lechatchila that one should be moitzi the other. And that stands in contrast to benching. By benching, lechatchila, one person, if you only have 2, one person cannot be moitzi the other. In order for one person to be moitzi others, you need at least 3. Now, what's the reason for this distinction? So if you take a look at the Dirshu footnote number 46, he says like this, Ubetam achiluk, the reason for this differentiation is, Kasav l'kamon, we have later on in Siman Kuf Tzad Gimel, Shedafka b'tchilas asuda, at the beginning of a meal, Shekoivim lechol yachdav, when people are being kaiveya to sit down to eat together, daitom lehitztarif. At the beginning of the meal, when they're sitting down to a Suda together, they have das to join together in a Suda, then it's appropriate for one to be moitzi another one. Masha'enkein b'soifa Suda. But at the end of the meal, for benching, shadaitam lihipared zemizeh. At the end of the meal, people have in mind to leave. So at the end of the meal, it's not so appropriate. Then each person has to make his own bracha. And another rationale for this is you have to remember that benching is one of the only brachas that we have that's a daraisa. So by a bracha daraisa hechmiruba, we're more machmer by benching, which is a daraisa. Ois nun hey in the Mishnah Berurah. The Mechaber said that this idea that one should be mitzi the others is only if hesebu, only if they're eating it behaseba, which creates a kvius. Says the Mishnah Berurah, kein hayadarkom achilasam derech kva. In the days of the Mechaber, when they wanted to be kivei suuda together, everybody ate behaseba. Liyos maten al tzidei and asmalas alamita. They leaned on the left side on a couch. Ice cotton and vav. The Mishnah Berurah said if it's a head of household with his family, so then that also creates a haseba. And here's where you see what I spoke out. Says the Chavetz Chaim, why does this work? Mishum dinigrarin acharov. Because the Bnei Beisai are pulled after the head of the household. Shehu Mesav. And he is sitting Be'aseba. Lakach mitztarfen imai. Therefore they combine with him, and it makes a kviyus together with him, afilu b'yeshiva greda, even though they are only sitting. Okay. All right, now we have to go weiter. So we're up to the third line down in the Shulchan Aruch, right near the beginning of the line, the word v'im. So again, what we've seen so far is, the Mechaber said, 2 people or more sit down to eat pas together, one should be mitzi the other. But this is only true, said the Mechaber, if they're all eating beheseba, because that means that they're being kaveh seuda together, said the Ramah, or if it's a head of household with his household. Then, even if he's eating beheseba and the rest aren't, his heseba creates a kviyus. Then the Mechaber said, but if they're not eating beheseba, then there's no kviyus. If there's no kviyus, then each one should make a berachah on his own. Now, says the Shulchan Aruch, there is another way to create kviyus even without heseba. Says the Mechaber, v'im amru noichal kan. If a group gets together and they say, let's eat here. So 5 Yidden walk out of the office together, and they find a nice place to sit down to eat, and they say, you know what? Come, let's eat here. Oh, so if they say, noichal kan, let's eat here, oy b'makom pliny, or they say, oh, there's a nice spot, let's eat over there. Kevan sheichinu makom lachilasan. In that case, since they designated a place for their meal, heavy kva, that creates a kviyus va'afilu b'lo heseba, even without heseba. Says the Mishnah Berurah cotton on Zion. Heavy kva va'alkein afilu kol echad oichel mikikara mitztarfen. And in that case, says the Mishnah Berurah, even if each one has their own tuna fish sandwich, so they're not breaking bread together. It's not that one person is making a motzi on a challah or a loaf of bread and giving out to everybody. No, everybody has their own sandwich. But they made a kviyus together. How did they make a kviyus together? By designating a spot and saying, let's eat over here. Now let's go back into the Shulchan Aruch. 4 lines down, v'ha'idna. Says the Mechaber, v'ha'idna. Nowadays, she'ein onu regilun ba'aseba. Says the Mechaber, I told you that to make a kviyus, either you need everybody to eat ba'aseba, or you need that the group should designate a place for their meal. Says the Mechaber, v'ha'idna she'ein onu regilun ba'aseba. Nowadays that we don't do this with heseba, yeshiva didon b'shulchan echad, are sitting down together at the same table, oy b'loy shulchan, or even if we don't have a table, b'mapa achas, if we eat by one tablecloth, you go to the park and you spread out a tablecloth, heavy kviyus, that creates a kviyus, va'afilu libnei chabura, and even not to a family, even to just a group of people who got together. Keheseba did hudami. That is similar to the heseba of earlier days. In other words, what the Mechaber is saying like this. I told you that in order to have kviyus, you need heseba. That's based on earlier days when to have kviyus, you had heseba. The Ramah threw in that a family could create kviyus even without everybody having heseba. Then the Mechaber said, a group of people could get together and create Haseba by designating a place. Now the Mechaber says, you know what? Nowadays we don't do a Haseba at all. Nowadays we don't do a Haseba. So our sitting by a table, so if a group gets together and sits together by one table, or they sit around one tablecloth, that's enough of a Haseba, and they don't have to be members of the same household. They could just be a disparate group of people, a bnei chabura. Continues the Mechaber. Ula didan afilu kavay makam lachi lasan. By us, even if you're kaveya, if you designate a place for the suda, oy balabayasim bnei beisai, or you have a head of household with his family, loy mahani el im ken yashvu b'shulchan echad oy b'mapa achas. Finally closes out the Mechaber, and he says, bottom line, for us, whether it's the case of people who got together and designated a place for their Suda, or it's a family sitting and eating together, you need at least that they should be eating by one table or by one tablecloth. Let's see some details here in the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Kat Nun Ches. The Mechaber said that he said nowadays when we don't eat Be'aseba, if a group of people got together and they sat by one table or one shulchan, that creates a kviyas, even va'afilu libnei chabura, even if they're only bnei chabura. What does that mean? Says the Mishnah Berurah over here is Kat Nun Ches. What the Shulchan Aruch wants to say is, we're not talking about a head of household with his household. Dilly did who? Because if we were talking about a head of household with his household, I feel him as man Gemara heavy keseba. You see, what the Mechaber said was a chiddush. The Mechaber said that nowadays, when we don't have Heseba, sitting around the table makes a kviyus even for a bnei chabura. What does he mean, even for a bnei chabura? Because for a head of household and his household, then even in the days when they did need Haseba, you don't need Haseba. But a group of disparate people do need Haseba. Nowadays, a group of disparate people sitting around a table, be yeshiva, upright in a chair, that is the same as what Haseba used to be. Aiskat nuntes, uludidan, for us, the Mishnah Berurah said, even if you're kaveya makayim, nowadays for us, even if you designate a place to eat together, or a head of household with his family, you still need that they should be sitting by a table or by a tablecloth. Tzarech Leimar, the way this really should read is not ulididon afilu. It should be afilu lididon. Why? Says the Mishnah Berurah. Tzarech Leimar v'afilu lididon. Or Tzayna Loimar, what the Mechaber wants to say is, you might make a mistake. You might say like this, Deloy Tema, do not say, Kevan Sheha Yeshiva Didon, since our sitting upright by a Suda, heavy Kaseba Didhu, is like the Haseba of the days of old. In Cain, if so, B'makam Deloy Boy Haseba Lididhu, so then in a case where we said, that back in the day when they sat by Haseba, you didn't need Haseba. Kigoyin, for example, Shekavu Makam Laki Lasan, right? The Mechaber told us, really, you could only be Moitzi, one person could only be Moitzi the rest if they eat by Haseba. Because you need Kviyas, and Haseba is what makes Kviyas. But then the Mechaber said, if people get together and they designate a place for their Suda, then they don't need Haseba. Why? Because designating a place for the Suda is just as good as Haseba. Now, the Mechaber said that in the context of back in the day when they needed Haseba. Again, what did the Mechaber say? The Mechaber said, one person wants to be Moitzi others, you need a Kviyas. How do you have a Kviyas? Everybody eats Haseba. Then the Mechaber said, but there's an exception to that. If 10 people get together and they say, oh, here's a good spot, let's eat here. Then the Mechaber said, you don't need a Seba. Then later on in the Sif, the Mechaber says, forget a Seba. Nowadays, we don't do a Seba. Nowadays, our sitting upright in a chair is the equivalent of Heseba yesteryear. Ooh, so now you might say it like this. If you're telling me that our yeshiva is like their Heseba, right? So they needed Heseba, we don't need Heseba. For us, yeshiva is good enough. Then maybe in a case where you don't even need Heseba, like where you designated a place, maybe you don't even need yeshiva. Maybe nowadays we don't even have to be sitting together. We could be milling around like a smorgasbord. Maybe that's okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. That's what the Mechaber means at the end of the Sif, when he says, Afilu lididan, even to us who we don't need a seba, because we don't do a seba, still you need that they should be sitting together around a table. Inside, Sarach Leimer Vafilu Didan, or it's under Leimer, Deloitema, you shouldn't say, Kevin She Yeshiva Didan, since our sitting upright, Hevika Seba Didhu, is the equivalent of a Seba of yesteryear. In Cain, if so, B'makom Deloibaya Seba Didhu, so that in a case where in yesteryear they didn't need a Seba, like in a case where they designated a place for the Asuda, Tahainu, meaning Sha'amru Noichal Kane B'makom Ploini, where they said, let's eat here or over there, V'chein Balabaisim B'nei Beisai, or a head of household with his household, Dilididhu Loi Tzarech Haseba, which even yesteryear they didn't need Haseba, Havamina, I would think, Dilididon, that nowadays by us, Loi Tzarech Hafilu Yeshiva. Maybe you don't need even sitting together around the table. Kamash Balon, the Mechaber teaches me, the below yeshiva lo mikri kfa, without sitting, you can't have a kviyas. Even nowadays, without sitting, you can't have a kviyas. The Gra says a big chiddush. The Gra says that when the Mechaber says over here that you have to be sitting around one table or around one mappa, the Gra says no. No. You don't need the shulchan. You don't need the mappa. You just need to be sitting together. Okay, I thought we would get a little bit further, but not bad. We did a good piece, most of the page. We're going to stop over here with Sif Yud Beis. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Schos of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe Shalom should say, Yeshua Sefuris Parnaset Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zeichet to see the Bias Gal Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu. Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Anasuna Batzara B'Ashivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachem Alehem V'Yitziim Mitzara L'Revacha Me'afela L'Oiro Mishibet L'Geula Hashta Bagala Uzman Kariv V'Neimar Amen. Be well.